I have 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting of the Grafton Finance Committee to order. We'll start off by talking about the remote participation pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Various boards and committees representing the town of Grafton will conduct their public meetings and hearings via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. So we are good to go. We have 8 of the 9 members of the Finance Committee present, along with our executive assistant and our temporary town administrator. So we'll get started right away. The first thing on the agenda tonight is to meet with the temporary town administrator to discuss revenue estimates, general discussion on the chart of accounts, enterprise funds, single transaction budgeting, and to select the finance committee representative to the finance director, town accountant screening committee. So I will stop talking and turn it right over to you, Carter.
Don't you have
Sorry, did I do something wrong? Hold on a second, Carter.
Don't you have to take roll call?
Oh, you're right. I just assumed. So let's take roll call. Irene,
Irene Hool here.
Barry,
Harry Smith here.
Sue Robbins,
Sue Robbins here.
Andy Jefferson,
Andy here.
Heather McHugh,
Heather here.
Gopal Shenoy,
Gopal here.
Dan Kusher,
Dan here.
Mark Haddad is here, Sue Fiacco,
I am here.
and our temporary town administrator, Carter Terenzini. So without further ado, Carter, I'll turn this over to you.
Carter, I have to say that you're scaring me because you keep disappearing in part.
Yeah, there's something really weird going on here. A couple weeks ago at the TRICOM committee, I presented to the 3 boards, this body, the select board, and the school committee, a draft revenue projection for FY22. I want to just go back and touch upon how I developed that. We used basically an assumption that there would be a full increase in the personal property and real estate, that is the 2.5%. For everything else, we used what we basically call a 3-year model. That is to say, we take 5 years of actual, we throw out the high, we throw out the low, and then we average those in the middle. We have not assumed any cannabis revenues in these projections. We did receive some good news today that MJ's Market looks like they're about to make their building permit application and commence construction by the first of the year. So I think you will see some of those revenues, but I'm not sufficiently convinced that you will, that I want to include them in the revenue stream. The other major assumption in here is that the state will find a way, either through economic recovery, tapping the rainy day fund to a greater extent. There's still about $3 billion that remains there, and or some hoped for assistance from the feds for state and local governments. We made an assumption that revenues will essentially remain static from the FY21 levels, which are being held essentially level with the FY20.
Carter, can I interrupt? Could I interrupt for a
Please.
second?
Do
Have you
please.
have you received revenues for this fiscal year, and are they on track to what the budget calls for? Have you looked at yet?
They are at this point. Everything seems to be holding up. Meals tax is actually holding up. Same in the other community that I was managing. I don't know how they are for you there in Groton.
We're doing pretty good on meals tax. People are eating.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, it's a different kind of sales that the restaurants are doing. It's much
Yep.
more to go than sit down. But in terms of the meals tax itself, it's actually holding up. So what I wanted to try to do, and we've given you the the live file, people can do any what ifs if they want. But I wanted to try to do is to answer any questions you might have. I've asked the same of the select board. I'll make adjustments that I deem are warranted. And then I'll be presenting this to the select board on 1 December for hopefully their action. Once they act upon it, then it will become what I build the budget to. Obviously, there may be some minor changes here and there. If cannabis does really get open on time, we might tweak that number a little bit. The state aid will be what the state aid is. The other number that will change when you see this with your budget book, you'll notice that the sewer revenues are kept flat, they're kept even. We'll be talking to you about breaking that out of the general budget and carrying the enterprise fund as a standalone budget. So the only thing that you will see at that point in time is the payments from the sewer fund. But we kept it alone for now, so you can see that $1.45 million anticipated increases in revenues. Happy to answer questions, why I use the methodology I do, where it came from, and try to get you answers.
I'll start with a question. So on the override, you're carrying 575. I take it that's 2/5 of what's left, or 1/5 of the amount of money left, or 1/4, I should say quarter of the money?
It's 1/4.
1/4, because we use
You're right.
875 this year. That's right.
Right. I've gotten different, was it to be brought in over 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? So I've taken the most conservative approach. The board obviously, at its meeting in December, could say, no, bring more in. So I took the 3.2 million, subtracted the 900,000 roughly that you've already applied, leaving me with 2.3 million. Assumed that would be brought in over 4 years. So there's the 575.
And on the state aid, you have a $300,000 reduction on what was taken in this year on regular aid, and then on education aid, you've cut that 700,000. Is that what you're anticipating to see in reductions for those budgets?
It is.
Have we, I haven't heard anything from the state about next year. So I think it's wise to be conservative in those numbers. Do you think you're overly conservative, or are you, where do you think you are? Because that's a pretty significant reduction. I mean, I'd hate to see that happen, but it could happen.
Yeah. I am accused of being overly conservative at times. The bad side of that is I have to cut expenses to balance out against the revenues.
Yeah.
The good side of that is I've never had a budget get in any sort of deep trouble. And we've always been pretty good generators of free cash. I leave to the community where that right balance should be. If the committee thinks I'm being over conservative. Now, at the end of the day, no matter what this chart says, it's going to be what House 1 is.
Okay. Ooh, what happened? Did I do something wrong with that? I lost the,
Your screen share.
I lost it. What did I do? I'm losing my mind here. How
Okay.
did I do that?
Yeah.
Are,
So Carter,
I can't be
basically,
trusted.
yeah,
are you on a Mac?
in terms
No.
of state revenue, we have no control.
Say that
Well,
again, Irene?
I was saying, in terms of state revenue, Carter said at the end of the day, House 1, what they finally pass is it. And I'm just confirming, we can't do a whole lot about that. We pretty much have to wait and see what they tell us they're giving us.
well, let me just say that I don't wait to see beyond House 1. I always build the budget to House 1. There's only been 1 year in my career in which the final budget came out a little bit lower than House 1. Generally, after the The House adds a little something, and then the Senate maybe adds a little something. But usually with that, I just sweep that into the overlay to bulk that up a little bit. Or I use it to offset something that may have gone wrong in another revenue somewhere.
Okay.
So yes, I do use the governor's House one.
So that usually comes out on February 1st, but they haven't even passed this year's budget yet. So we, it's hard to say, will the governor be presenting a budget for fiscal year 22 on February 1st as he ordinarily does, since we haven't even approved the FY 2021 budget yet.
That's
So I think it's probably going to
very
be
true.
later, correct?
That's very true. Actually, this was not an election year for the governors, so I think it's actually due by about January 20. He gets a couple extra weeks when it's an election year.
Yep.
So this is the best estimate we can give you right now.
Yep.
And again, I am known for being a little conservative.
Which I appreciate. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Gopal.
The state education aid, if it drops, you're assuming that it actually goes up by $100,000, $102,000. Is that right?
Basically.
Yeah. Okay. So that, even if it's conservative, I like it in the sense that the school budget is not going to be further cut. Is that a safe assumption?
Absolutely not.
Not a safe assumption.
No, I mean, there's three sides to the house here. You've got Blackstone Valley, which, by the way, you've had a 8-student increase, which is a 13% increase in census. May not sound like much, but the bottom line is that your assessment to Blackstone Valley is going to go up above just simply an inflationary rate of what the budget was. So the Blackstone Valley budget will go up. I don't know it well enough, so I don't want to, speak, but let me just use a number and say that this year you had 20% of the student base. You might have 26% next year. I don't know the numbers. I just using that for illustration. So then you have the remainder of the monies that are available, and you could make an assumption that schools are first and the towns are what's left. I don't think that's the way, it's certainly not the way other communities I've worked with. Usually we sit down with the schools. I've had a preliminary conversation with the superintendent to talk about, how once we have settled upon what the revenues are going to be, we're kind of going to have a conversation about what your needs are. Their needs could be intensive because of continuation of COVID. But I look at more as a sharing of resources than one side of the house first and the other side of the house with what's left.
Do we know what percentage of the 11.1 in 2021 went to Blackstone and how much was available for Grafton Public Schools?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
I'll go, Paul. When you do a budget, the school budget is 34 million. Our assessment to Blackstone was about 870,000, I think. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. So the 11 million isn't taken and all of a sudden divided up amongst the schools. It's used as a revenue to offset the total school budget. So a percentage of that doesn't go to Blackstone and a percentage of it doesn't go to Grafton Public Schools. It's just used as a revenue source to fund the school budgets.
Got it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Carter.
No, spot on.
So Carter, I'm sorry, does somebody else have another question before I keep babbling? So Carter, last year, your revenues was 66,147,000 to balance the FY 21 budget. This year, you're looking at 67.5, so an increase of about $1.4 million. Have you talked to Jay yet? Do we have an idea on what the schools are looking for next year?
We do not. We had a preliminary conversation, just kind of here's the revenue. We need to have a further discussion. I know he's deep into his budget, deeper in than we are. And we'll have another conversation once I have a revenue structure that's been approved by the select board.
I have no issue with the way you put these projections together. I hope the state revenue comes in more than you're projecting, so that'll help you overall, but I think you're using sound logic in how you've set aside the numbers, and I think the override number is the right number, considering, the goal here is to try to get it to last 5 years. So using that number is good. The select board would have to make a determination and a decision if they want to use less or more rather to balance the budget this year, which would shrink the amount of money available in future years. That's a decision for the select board to make. And I think as you get closer to town meeting and you see the progress of the marijuana facility, you might be able to adjust that number too, but at least you'll have hard facts and it won't be a guess. You'll have a building permit and construction in front of you. So I think that would be very, very helpful as well, moving forward.
I do want to speak to the cannabis revenue issue for a moment. There's two sides to it. There's the impact fee, and then there's the supplemental tax. Well, I might include some of the supplemental tax as I see what the progress is over the next 2 months or so. The impact fee I would not include in the operating budget whatsoever. I would let it flow to your miscellaneous non-recurrings and let it flow to free cash because it's 5 years. You can't build an operating budget on a 5-year sunsetting revenue, in my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions on the revenues? Go ahead, Barry, and then Irene.
Okay, I'm going to ask a general question. Most of our revenue line items and on our expense line items show an upward trajectory almost every year. But when we use the average of 3 approach, we tend to get lower numbers for a good number of these items. So I get a little, I like being conservative, but I think in some cases we may be missing what the actual revenue will be. That's spoken as a guy who's never run a town.
If I can jump in, Carter, if you don't mind. I think given the COVID impact on operations, on businesses, on potential revenues, I think FY22 is the year to do exactly what Carter is doing. You don't have any idea what the total impact is going to be at the end of FY21. That's why I asked how we're tracking on this year's revenues after the first quarter, because that's an indicator of what to expect for the rest of the year, obviously, especially over the summer building season, to see how building permit revenues and the like are coming in. But I think this is the year, Barry, that you really need to be conservative in building the budget, building the revenue numbers. And I think Carter's logic here is sound, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, it will definitely have an impact on the budget and how much you can spend. But I think at the end of the day, it's a wise decision to do what he's doing it that way. Irene, did you have a question?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was just curious, when and how will we see an accounting of the COVID grants? So for example, I know the town got a significant grant from the state. I'm trying to think if you got a federal one or maybe the federal one came through. Now I know there are some like the ESSER grant that went off to the schools, 100% straight to the schools. But we also got a grant, every town did. And it was supposed to be spent on COVID expenses. And to the best of my knowledge, it was, PPE and education and training. And I know in our case, a lot of technology for students so that we could afford to go remote. Do we get to see that? Will that ever be reported to us?
Oh, you mean, what is that with regard to revenues?
Yeah, because that's, well, I guess the spending is spending, but money came in. Are we expecting any more to come in? And what effect, if any, will that have?
The money won't be repeated in FY '22, so it won't have any impact on the budget whatsoever.
So the way that this went is there was essentially a entitlement distribution across the state. I'm thinking yours was in the $1.7 million range, if I'm remembering. You then had to make an actual application for it in 2 rounds. And you did apply in both rounds. Anita Patel helped us with the second round, because remember, we're short the people that normally do that. The biggest challenge is even what we got here in late October technically has to be spent by December 31. So the first and most immediate relief that we're hoping Congress will pass is to extend the deadline for expending the monies into at least June 30 of 2021. So for instance, we applied for and were granted monies to make changes for health and safety of the employees, similar to the treasurer collector's office, so that the employees would all be behind protective glass and the like. So now getting that designed, getting that out to bid, getting that fully constructed, that's going to be a challenge. I'm not at all sure we're going to make that deadline. But certainly, at some point here, January or February, I'm happy to give the Finance Committee a brief on what was applied for, what was expended, and what it was used on.
Excellent. Any other questions on revenues?
Let me, if I might, Mark, just respond
Please, go ahead.
to Barry's comment. He's absolutely right. You're kind of cheating yourself out of money if you do this. I don't think this is a one-time change. I think that if you agree with this kind of conservative philosophy, you carry it forward. Barry, I've always tried to be relatively conservative on revenues, meaning don't anticipate the moon. Be at a point where you're pretty comfortable you're going to hit those targets. And if you exceed them, awesome. It flows to free cash. And be relatively conservative on expenses. By that, I mean, have them high enough so that it's going to actually cover your needs and you're not chasing and having to backfill numerous. You'll never go wrong. You'll never go wrong if you're conservative on both sides of that coin.
I have to agree with you 100%. And Barry, think about what happened last year when we were in here before town meeting, trying to come up with $800,000 worth of reductions because the revenues were way too rosy. So I think that this is a wake-up call to us. I think it's the right philosophy, especially given what happened last year. So I applaud Carter's conservatism.
Well, okay, maybe let me use this. We have a debt exclusion line item here, and I don't think debt exclusion is subject to averaging or anything. This is principal and interest on bonds that we already know what we're going to have to pay for the next 10, 20, 30 years. It's fixed, unless, of course, interest rates come down and we decide to renegotiate and do a
I
bond.
assume that's the number. I assume that's the number that you
So,
got from the treasurer.
Barry, if I gave you the impression that was done on the 3-year model, my apologies. That acts the actual projection that would be on the DE1.
Ah, okay.
I assume that when I saw that number there.
Ah, do I get extra credit for getting that right?
Absolutely.
No, you got it wrong.
Well, how about new growth? What do we have?
Well, new growth.
100?
New growth.
To be down 46%?
So new growth, I originally had at 625. The assessor's at 500. Substantially, and I think overly conservative. So I had 625. I brought it down to 600 just because it's, yeah, you know, interestingly, construction is not slowing down out there.
Right.
The assessor had 500. And in the interest of harmony in the house, I took my 600 and their 500 and I split it down the middle.
All right.
They're always, the assessors are always conservative and always come in higher. I think I've been on the finance committee 4 years now, and I think for 4 straight years, the number that we use at the beginning was always much lower than the actual number at the end. Sue, is that Sue Robbins? That's,
Yes, it's always that way.
yeah, so I can see that. I can see why the 550 makes sense.
We could certainly make that 600. I mean, at the end of the day, this is your advice and recommendation on what I'm putting forth to the select board. I do this with both bodies. I'm not sure that 50,000 of revenues is going to make or break this. And I did it basically for harmony in the house and the finance team. And
Go ahead, go Paul.
One thing that would really help me, maybe it's because I'm new. I see a budget for 2021, but I don't see the actuals year to date.
So that's the question I had asked at the beginning. Have they got the first quarter in yet? And Carter said they do, and it's been tracking online,
So,
right?
sorry, fiscal year runs from when to when?
July to August, July to June.
Okay. Sorry for the newbie questions.
No, it's not a newbie question. It's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Any other questions on revenues? Carter, do you want us to, do you want us to vote to support? Do you want us to tell you we think they're fine?
no, I mean, I think if the consent, if I've answered your questions, and the consensus is that the, you know, anything you think that's of real note, I mean, what I'm hearing is that new growth itself might be a little bit light, and a question of, you know, are we leaving a little bit too much on the table? But a recognition that being conservative in this environment and in terms of adjusting philosophy may be the way to go. If you feel that's a fair representation of what we've been talking about, frankly, that's what I'm going to say to the selectmen when I make this presentation on December 1.
I'm comfortable with that. Andy, you've been quiet. What's your thoughts?
Similar, you know, I think similar to Gopal, I'm taking it all in. You know, nothing jumping out at me. You know, I appreciate the approach Carter's taken to the budget, and you know, curious to hear other people's input. So just kind of keeping quiet and observing right now.
Right. So ask questions or give your input whenever you want.
Sure.
Go ahead,
Just
go
bear in
Paul.
mind that conservative revenues mean constrained spending.
Yep.
Everybody needs
Understood.
to know that going in.
Understood, 100%. Go Paul.
I'm the not quite one, unlike Andy.
That's for sure.
Carter, the concern I have is I agree with you to being conservative. The only concern I have is if we get too conservative with the budget, does that mean that we will go back to the town, all the different departments and say, you have to make cuts in your budget, because of which either you have to let people go or you won't be able to hire. Hire new, I'm not that concerned. That you have to let people go would be concerning to me, because if we are too conservative and if the actuals are higher than the budget, we shot ourselves in the foot. Meaning to say that extra money would go into free cash, but the town is actually working with less. That hurts the services that can be provided to citizens.
I understand your concern, and it does go into free cash. One of the things about budgeting is I noticed that you are funding things that in other communities would be in the operating budget. You're funding those with free cash now. I think the important thing here is to have a methodology to project your revenues. This happens to be mine. I've used it for a number of years, in part because it's pretty easy to explain to people. You know, there's not a lot of art to it. It's straight math. A little bit of art at the tail end, depending upon, did you have a new revenue stream? Did you increase a fee? Is the economy on the upswing? But for the most part, it's very easy to explain. There's not a lot of maneuvering on it. If you believe that a different methodology would better serve your purposes, it's your community. I would want to take that advice and draft a budget for you that fits your methodology. Let me say that I still have a week. If you have questions, I've sent, I believe I sent the live file to Sue to distribute to everybody. So y'all can play with some what ifs if you want. If you'd like some more time, I can say to the select board, you know, the finance committee had some questions and it might not be ready for prime time on December 1. I'd like to hold it till December 15. It's your community. I have just, will repeat what I've said, which is I have always found that being conservative on revenues, being conservative on expenses, and making those hard decisions has served financially the towns that I've worked for the best. And remember, if you get some extra free cash, great. Maybe you'll do something like put it in your OPEB account or put it in your operating stabilization fund, which isn't even at 5% of your total budget. I don't know what your target is there in Groton, Mark. You know, we've just moved our other town to 8%. Again, it's your community. Just give me what your advice is and we'll take it in.
Well, I guess what I want to say in response to what Gopal is saying is I want everybody to remember that was on the finance committee last spring when we had overly rosy revenue estimates and we spent hours coming up with reductions of over $800,000 in the proposed budget because the revenue projections were too rosy. I would rather see this conservative approach. I would rather have Carter build a budget to that approach. And if it gets to the point where things are going to be drastically cut because of the approach, then Carter, as he's building the budget, or the next town administrator, whoever's going to be building the budget, can go back and review those revenue estimates and adjust them accordingly based on the latest information at the time. But I do not want a repeat of what happened last spring. It was absolutely ridiculous that we had to go through that. So I have to say, as a matter of fact, I'm going to make a motion right now that I move that the finance committee supports the manner in which the temporary town administrator establishes revenue projections for FY22.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor by roll call, Irene,
Irene Hall, aye.
Barry Smith.
Dan had further discussion.
Never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have your hand up?
No, it's fine. We can just keep going.
Oh, Dan, no, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I didn't look down on my screen. Please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I also like the more conservative approach to it. I like to think of it as more fiscally responsible as somebody who's not exactly on the conservative side politically. But I, especially with the marijuana, though, I wanted to mention that was a big part of the adjustments we had to make. And I really appreciate not having that included at this point, especially the 5-year impact fee. The idea of not putting that toward the operating budget, I think, was the subject of a tense conversation we had at one point in one of these meetings. So I really strongly support that.
Go ahead, Andy.
I think to simpler point, and I guess I want to make sure I'm understanding this properly too, is to what you just mentioned, that if things do take a rosier glow as the year goes on, whoever is TA at that point can course correct accordingly with the budget. So,
Absolutely can.
okay, perfect.
Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to say that I do like this approach. It is very conservative, much more conservative than we have in the past. But just like Mark had said, because we had to make $800,000 cuts, there were things that came out of our operating budget that never should have been taken out and used for free cash. And now, because of that approach, it's probably going to take us 2 or 3 years to even get that back into the budget again, because once something is taken out, it's difficult to get it back. So even though this is conservative, and I hate to see some of our like police cruisers and stuff not being put back into the budget, we have no choice. We have to start looking in a more conservative way so that when we look down the road in 5 years, we can start hopefully putting back some of the things that should be in the budget on an annual basis.
I agree. Any other comments? Barry?
Unfortunately, yeah. I just see us bringing on a more expensive town administrator, someone who's going to command a fairly serious salary as a finance director plus accountant. The fire chief, the command staff will be full-time. We're going to have that. There's a couple of other goodies that are going to show up in here. And I look at the bottom line of 67 million, and I'm saying, I don't know if that's going to be able to support the things that we're running after.
Well, let me.
It's conservative. Okay.
Yeah, but Barry, on the issues that you brought up, when Carter put together the budget for FY 21, the final budget that went through, and when he made the recommendation on the finance director and the salary for the TA and the reorganization, it didn't impact the budget because he reallocated funds already appropriated in the
Right.
budget by reducing the assistant administrator and putting more focus there. So I don't think those positions are going to impact the budget. I think it's a level funded number going in. And Carter, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's essentially correct.
But I understand your point, Barry, that, we have to be careful, but I think by coming in conservative, it's a lot better to build than it is to take down, as we did last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last year's numbers, I think it frustrated all of us when we were in the select board, when we were in the meeting with the select board, and these numbers were just crazy. And he couldn't even explain half of them. So my philosophy as in my career, I've always been conservative. So I have no problem with this. And like everyone's been saying, it's a lot easier to build off of, oh, great, we just got more money. It's so much easier to be able to be in that position than in the position where we have to cut 800. Where are we going to find that? So I have no problem with this at all.
Geez, I'm watching everybody's head. It's like a bunch of bobbleheads.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to let Carter know. So I'm not questioning your approach. This is my first time, so I'm trying to learn and asking questions that come to my mind, probably more as a citizen than a member of the finance committee. So I just wanted to let you know where I'm coming from.
Well, I don't want to mislead you. 1.4 million of new revenue, based upon the increases that you're gonna need to look at. So you've got the change in Blackstone Valley, which last year I think was close to a $75,000 bump by itself. You've got this change in the census. Your trash collection contract is probably gonna be in the neighborhood of 125,000. So, you know, you're 225 to 250 right there before you even out of the gate. There will be some hurt feelings and very painful discussions. But I think that having painful discussions that come in front of you and everybody looks at, and it at least makes sense. The math adds up, everything can be explained, and it resets to go forward has got to be better than having painful discussions at the last minute of where the heck do we find this money? And is that
Exactly.
number really a good number? And why do we have this number? In some ways, I'm looking forward to leaving you. In other ways, I'm wishing I was staying a little bit just to
Whoa,
ride.
whoa,
the
whoa, whoa,
thing
whoa. What do you
through.
mean you're looking forward to leaving us? That's very
I'm
hurtful.
on the downhill curve here, my man. We're on the first of the second 33-month term here, you know, so. And again, I want to just repeat, it's your community. I'm looking for your advice on what you think's the right methodology. And if this committee just thinks I'm off base, I'm open. That's why I'm here.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Not from me.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Irene,
Irene Hall, aye.
Barry,
Barry, aye.
Sue Robbins,
Aye.
Andy,
Andy, I.
Gopal. I didn't hear, I'm sorry, what did Gopal say?
I
Heather,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Mark, aye. Thank you. So moving on to the next thing, Carter, you wanted to talk about the chart of accounts.
Yes, you have some accounts. Let me see if I can get them up here. Basically, you're on classifieds. I'm looking to distribute some of those back to what I think are the more appropriate departments. For instance, the auditing services I normally find in accounting, and some of these others, and not necessarily for tonight, but when you have charts of accounts that are this defined, it makes it very constrictive during the course of the year. Some communities have actually moved to full omnibus budgets. Mark, what do you use up there in Groton?
We do the line item.
Yeah. So there are some accounts that I think could be merged, could be presented as one, and would reduce the need for transfers at year end and provide more flexibility throughout the course of the year. So I would just like to ask the committee to look at these various accounts. And if they see something that they think isn't in the right place or could be consolidated, to provide you that flexibility. There was a substantial number of transfers at just special town meeting last year in the spring. Just drop me a note, tell me what you think they are, and we'll take them into consideration.
So is your plan to take the chart of accounts and reorganize it as you put the budget together?
Not to any great degree, but for some of the smaller items, the town report, put it right in the select board's office, auditing services, put it right in the accounting office, put some of these in the functional units that actually administer them.
Hey, the less line items, the better, right?
That's my belief.
I concur with that. Any questions on that from the finance committee, Barry?
Doesn't that have an impact on the software?
No. The only impact it has is that when the strike that, it can make year-to-year comparisons a little more difficult. So if you've always had, let's say, your audit and your Medicaid processing and your workers' comp in a given budget, and then you move it someplace else, for a couple of years till that flattens out, you can wonder, well, what the heck happened? So for instance, that's the kind of thing that can happen, Barry. But the only other impact is that on July 1 of 2021, if there's a bill for the town report, the person who did the report has to remember to code it to the new account.
All right.
Any other questions on that? All right, so Carter. Next, you wanted to talk about the enterprise funds?
Yeah, I really want to talk about the sewer fund, and that's also single. I think we had a single transaction accounting there, Mark. We talked
That's the next
about.
thing, yeah, your enterprise and single transaction
Yeah.
budgeting.
So you right now carry your sewer, which is an enterprise fund, as part of your omnibus budget. What I would like to do is to actually make it its own article. It's a little bit cleaner. And then right now what you do is you pay the debt for the sewer department and a lot of expenses for the sewer department out of the general fund. Then the general fund bills the sewer department. Then they process a reimbursement back to the general fund. That's why the sewer transfers are so large. The treasurer collector and the accountant have recommended a process that's similar to what I've used in some other communities. That, Mark, I'm not sure how you do it up there, but
We do it
just
as a
pay the
separate
debt. Just pay the debt directly out of the sewer fund, because otherwise you're carrying. Let me just use a number: $1 million in the general fund to pay the sewer debt. Then you're carrying $1 million in the sewer fund to pay the general fund. It's added transactions and it bulks up the budget. You don't get a true picture of what the budget is. So that's the direction that we're thinking makes a little more sense. The current accountant likes it. The former accountant, Ms. Patel's, recommended it. Treasurer collector likes it a little bit better. I think it's a little bit cleaner, but we wanted to bring it to your attention and address any concerns before we went ahead and did it.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. Keep it separate. It's a separate enterprise fund. To have it's part of the overall budget is confusing. So I like this approach. Go ahead, Barry. And then Sue.
Okay, help me with this one. The enterprise fund currently pays a chunk of the DPW director's salary.
Yep.
And they get charged for accounting services, I think HR services, space used, and copiers.
Yep.
Is that
Won't change.
doesn't change?
That part won't change. The difference might be in how we do it. You can, so you have a DPW director who's paid, I don't know, 110,000, let's say, and you have a cost allocation. You can simply charge the pro rata share right directly there. The big thing is on the debt, health insurance, and some of the other items. You pay them directly, and you have it as a separate standalone appropriation article.
All right.
We'll still do all those cost recoveries, Barry.
Sue?
I just want to say, I'm so glad that somebody has finally decided to do this, because I've wondered ever since for a long, long time why this has never been done this way. It makes everything more transparent as far as I'm concerned, and much easier to go through the budget and read everything. So thank you. I appreciate that it's going to be done this way, because I think it's just a better way of accounting for all our dollars.
Any other questions on that? All right, looks like you have our support on doing that, Carter. The last thing on the agenda was you're looking for a representative from this committee to serve on your search screening committee for the finance director, town accountant.
Yes,
Um,
we are gonna have 4 persons on that. Ms. Patel, Ms. Oliver, Ms. Perkins, and we would like to invite, I may add somebody else. And we'd like to invite someone from the Finance Committee to sit on that screening panel. We're gonna be asking the screening panel, we're gonna identify 6 to 8 people who've applied. We're gonna ask the screening panel to interview those people and recommend the top 2 people to me. I'll do some final interviews and then make an appointment for confirmation by the select board. But we would like to invite the Finance Committee to participate in that process.
Is there a volunteer from the FinCom that would like to do that? Irene?
Yep.
We don't need to vote that, right? We could just designate Irene as our rep.
Yeah, I mean, just,
All right, Irene, you are our rep.
Okay.
Sue, if you can just send me Irene's direct contact. I don't think I have her standalone. I think I've emailed the FinCom as a group to date.
I will do that.
Excellent.
Irene, we're gonna do our first review of the applications on Monday. We'll reach out to you in the next day or 2 to try to get a interview date, because my hope is to get this before the select board by December 15th, so I can try to get somebody in by January 1. I do want to warn you that these people are few and far between. As Mark knows, finding finance professionals at the municipal level is especially difficult. We hope we got some good applicants, and we hope that the screening panel is able to send us some folks they have confidence in.
Barry, did you have a question?
Just a comment to follow up. At the Town Finance Committee sessions, I asked about finding a combination finance and accountant. And they said, yeah, it's a good idea to combine them. In fact, it's a good idea to combine the offices, the physical space these guys work in. But they said it's going to be hard because they are unique and you're going to pay a premium.
That's for sure. Well, hopefully,
Hope,
Carter,
hope
good luck.
springs eternal, Barry.
Good luck, Carter, with that search. Are there any more questions for the temporary town administrator? Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to bring up the subject of if Carter was going to send a letter to our state rep to talk
yes.
about the legislative for the finance committee changes.
Carter, did you forward the vote from town meeting to David to have him file the legislation?
I'll speak with Paul Cook tomorrow morning.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Sue. Other Sue. Sue Fiacco, you have your hand
Yes.
up?
Is it too soon to address the fact that we need a public hearing for the budget presentation? I'm just a little bit not concerned, but I just want to make sure that we address Carter's time frame that he's with us.
I would say, Carter, give us, put together your plan and let us know when you plan on giving it to the select board, and then we'll figure out a date for the finance committee. I know a lot of things are up in the air.
Yes.
So so I would just assume wait until Carter has more information.
Yeah, let me see what I get, because remember, I'm doing this as a team of one. We don't have an accountant. We don't have a second person in the office. Our accounting clerk is working remote, not physically present. So give me 2 or 3 weeks to see what I'm getting in from the departments. And then I'll take a best guess at the timeline I'm going to be on.
That sounds good. Thank you.
A team of one. I like that.
A team of one.
Team of one.
You're always welcome to play on my team, however, Mark.
Thank you, Carter.
Mark,
Any
may I
other
ask
go
one
ahead.
more question, please?
Please, of course.
Yeah, Carter, are we sending the budget directives directly to you?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna put our budget together tonight, Carter, and we'll get it off to you tomorrow. I don't think it's gonna make or break your overall budget, but at least you'll have the information. All right, any other questions for Carter? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Terenzini. We
thank
appreciate
you
your
for your
time as
time,
always.
folks.
Thank
You have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
So going from the frying pan into the fire, why don't we go right into our proposed budget for the Finance Committee and the Reserve Fund? You guys all got that this afternoon? I have no changes, no recommended changes. Does anybody?
I remember seeing it. Hold on for a second. Where is it?
Came in this afternoon. Sue sent it out.
You know what the name of the file is?
The email,
Finance Committee Reserve Fund FY 22 budget Rec XLSX.
Hold on just for a second.
the email came in at 11:19 this morning. There were 5 attachments to it. And it's titled
Yep.
Thursday, November 19th, Public Meeting of the Finance Committee.
Yep, now I've got it. Somehow I missed it because I was so busy looking at the things from Carter.
I have to say, well, you guys are looking at the budget. I think Carter's done a tremendous job.
Oh,
Town's
yeah.
been very well served by Mr. Terenzini, and we're very lucky to have him.
Now, we're talking about the fiscal 22 budget, right?
Correct, our budget that we're gonna submit to Carter.
Okay, so I've got the reserve fund open. We want to do the typical.
75.
75,000.
Why don't we do that one first? That one's easy. I'd entertain a motion to adopt our budget recommendation for the reserve fund in the amount of $75,000. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those by roll call in favor, Irene,
Aye.
Barry,
aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Joe Paul,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Mark, I. And then our I'm sorry, oh, go ahead, Sue.
You want to explain to Gopal and Andy what that reserve fund is for?
Yeah, so we set aside in the operating budget, every year, $75,000 that is for emergencies. If an unforeseen circumstance comes up and something that we didn't anticipate, departments can come to the Finance Committee for what do they call a reserve fund transfer that would allow us to pay for the shortfall that they have in their budget. So for example, this year, the Finance Committee, through unforeseen circumstances, is going to have a shortfall in the administrative assistance line item. The reason for that is, there was a lot more meetings, there was a lot more going on, and we used Sue more than we ordinarily would in a given year. So there'll be a shortfall in that line item. So we will ask for reserve fund transfer because that was unforeseen. We would ask for reserve fund transfer to increase that budget to offset that additional expense. Does that make sense? Okay. So then the second budget is our regular line item. And if you give me 1 second here, I will put it up on the screen so we can all see it. So this is the budget. We're looking to fund the salary line item at $11,518. And our expenses, we're looking to fund at $4,525, which is level funded from last year, for a total budget of $16,043. Are there any questions on that budget? I'd entertain a motion to, oh, go ahead, Sue.
Wait, sorry.
I'm sorry, Heather.
That's sorry. I'm like, I've never used Zoom on my phone. So I'm like, I'm like I'm a fish out of water here. Sorry, I have a quick question. Are you
Please.
accounting for any changes in Sue? Are we not even going to worry about that and just sort of go forward with the current budget, or
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
that's fine.
I'm not-
That's fine. Yeah, that's what I figured. I just wanted to make sure that that was the methodology. That's all.
Excellent. No, excellent point. Excellent point.
Okay.
Any questions? Sue Fiacco?
Yes. So once again, bringing up the crazy equipment conversation, it was suggested that if we are not CARES eligible, to put it into the FY22 budget. And I understand Finance Committee's concern or comments in the recent past to level fund FY22 for all the right reasons.
Well, I still want to get you that laptop this year. Did we ever find out if there was any CARES money available for that?
So it's still up in the air. Basically, the comment was because you've always been remote, it may not be an eligible cost or purchase. So I don't know just yet.
All right, well, let's try to get an answer for that, and we'll deal with that at our next meeting, because we can always try to do a line item transfer this year in the spring to get a new computer, or if there's CARES money left, we can try to jump on that. So let's keep that on the docket. Sue Robbins,
What are we estimating for the cost of a new computer?
I think it was $1,000, right?
Cindy had suggested to put 1,200 in.
Okay.
So
Actually, you know something, just to keep it on the docket, just to keep it alive and fresh, why don't we put $1,200 in for equipment outlay into this
that's
budget?
what I was going to suggest, because it's $1,200. I mean,
Yeah, let's put that, Sue, let's amend this and make the budget $17,243 by adding a $1,200 line item for the computer. And
Okay.
if we can get it this year, that would be great, and we can just eliminate that.
if not,
And sorry to
Go ahead,
butt
go ahead,
in,
Heather.
we need a new computer. I don't want a refurbished one. Like, I think we've
100%.
waited,
Yep.
we've waited long enough for a new computer for Sue. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I'm with you 100%, Heather. Go ahead, go, Paul.
My question is, given the fact that we have a $75,000 reserve budget, can't we get a computer for $1,200 by taking $1,200 from there?
Well, it has to be, if you are a true reserve fund, it has to be an unforeseen, unanticipated emergency expense. We've known about Stu's computer for the 3 years I've been on the finance committee, the 4 years I've been on the finance committee. So I don't see that as unforeseen. So we can't use the reserve fund to do that. Now,
Okay.
at the spring town meeting, we can do a line item transfer out of the reserve fund or something. Town meeting has that ability to put money in the, to pay for it. But I hope CARES money will be available. Sue Robbins?
I was going to say, we have to put you said we have to put the 1,200 in the budget. Otherwise, we'll never get it.
Yep.
And if somehow we are not be able to buy it this year, that money will be, it'll be one of the turnbacks. But if we have to put it there and make a statement, otherwise it's going to be overlooked all the time. And we really need this new budget. I mean, this new computer.
I agree 100%.
$1,200 isn't going to break our budget, I don't think, hopefully.
Nope. So that would make this line item $17,243. Can I have a motion to approve the recommended budget to the town
So
administrator?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? All those in favor by roll call, Irene,
Irene, I.
Barry,
Barry, aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
go Paul,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Mark, aye, unanimous. All right, next on the agenda,
Mark,
moving along. Oh, go ahead, Irene.
Yeah, I just want to ask Susan, you say that you were, quote, always remote, and that's why they thought the CARES Act wouldn't cover this? Did I hear you correctly?
that is correct.
Okay,
But
so
you're
in other
not
words,
always remote.
that's what I was going to try and make the point of. I'm like, wait a second, I'm missing something here. So if we go back a year, okay, so it's now September of 2019, would you normally have gone into town hall to do your job?
No.
No, only during the public hearings and public meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
when you were first hired, were you handed a laptop and told, here, you can use this, take it home?
No,
Okay, So in other words,
She wasn't always remote.
It wasn't always remote.
okay, so given that the job itself, as, you know, with a job description, and from when you started, would have been based in town hall, and now cannot be, and certainly could not have been, you know, when we were totally closed, going back to March, April, May, there should be no question about this qualifying for the CARES Act.
I agree with you.
Okay,
Okay,
I
there's
will
a-
make that
Take
presentation.
specifically Sue Fiacco out of it and look just at the position.
Yes,
This position is town hall based. And in
Yeah, because
order
when
for
she
this town
comes,
hall
she
based
comes to meetings.
position to function, we
right.
have to provide a quote emergency, you know, laptop in order for this person to be able to work remote at all times.
Yeah, I think that the conversation or the response was because I work primarily from home. I think that's,
But that's you personally, that's not the position. In other words, this
but
goes to the position, this
I feel like
computer doesn't go to the person.
Go ahead, Dan.
I feel like the key point though is the need for this laptop was not COVID driven. Like Sue has had a laptop from
Right.
the town for a while now, not when she started, but for a while. And she's needed a new laptop for a little while now. And that started before COVID. I think that's kind of the key point there, that it's the need for this laptop is not directly COVID driven.
I believe that was that was the reason for the response that I was given. And, you know, I don't have, you know, we have a desk now in conference room E, but Finance Committee no longer has an office. So I think that's what she meant by the word remote when it was discussed. And kind of to Dan's point, I think that was the interpretation. And it is. I work with a laptop, but when I started 30 some odd years ago, of course, I didn't have a laptop. We had a typewriter that I shared with 3 other people.
Well, if I may, let's put it in the budget.
Yes.
And then if we can get CARES to cover it, great. If not, it's in the budget.
Okay,
Right,
Did we vote on this already?
no.
A motion?
yeah, we did.
Yes, we have a
We did vote.
motion and
Okay.
a second. Yes.
Okay, we voted.
And an
All
all in
right,
favor.
so next on the agenda is the Finance Committee term membership, discussion of the process and question for Finance Committee term membership renewal. Barry, I believe you put this on the agenda. Do you want to explain why?
My original question was about what criteria would be used to say, okay, this is a great person to have on the Finance Committee, or this guy's a dunderhead, get rid of him. How do you measure that? What questions are you asking?
So is this for when the Finance Committee has a representative on the tri committee that appoints the Finance Committee? Is
Yeah,
that what-
okay, I'm confusing myself. The town moderator, town clerk, and somebody from the Finance Committee are going to review new appointees to the Finance Committee, and every 3 years, if you want to re-up your term, that 3-person board is going to review credentials for being on the Finance Committee continuing. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, so
Just curious. Yeah, I want Dave Libby, and while you're at it, let's bring in Mnuchin. Yeah, he should be good because they have a lot of finance skills. I mean, I've talked with other finance committees, which is always cool. It's too bad we couldn't do the week-long, the Saturday thing again. But when I ask them, they say, yeah, we like to have people who have banking or finance backgrounds. But we also like to have so-and-so who's a contractor because he knows buildings and he knows what you're talking about when you're talking about buildings. Or we like to have this other person from the school because schools are a big part of the budget, or. So it's not 9 bankers on your finance committee. It's a mix of people. But still, what skills are you looking for? Yeah, I got an MBA, big deal. What questions should they be able to answer or ask? That's my question.
Sue?
I guess I'm getting confused because I thought, Barry, you were first suggesting for reappointing people. Or is it for both, for reappointing? Because there's 2 different, when there's a vacancy, I can see that you would want some guidelines, but you're going to be asking questions. What about reappointments? Are you looking for a criteria too for reappointments?
Why not?
Well, I was just asking, are you doing both?
I thought that, okay, if you want to re-up, my understanding is this 3-person board is going to say, yes, you can re-up, or no, you cannot re-up. And if that's the
That's
case,
correct.
well, what do you base the re-upness on?
Well, from my perspective, Barry, if a member was up for reappointment and I was the one, say I'm the designated person on the TRICOM, I'm going to think about that person's participation, number of meetings they attend, input into the process, participation in the meetings, and what they bring to the table. For example, if Gopal was up for reappointment this year, I would say absolutely. He asked a lot of questions. But you know what I'm saying. He asks a lot of questions. He participates. He comes to the meetings, and he's trying to learn. To me, that's an investment we've made in that particular individual.
Sure.
He should continue to serve. Now, if you're looking at a brand new member, I had the opportunity when Andy got appointed to have a phone conversation with Andy, and we talked for what, Andy, 20 minutes, I think, when you 20 or 25 minutes when your name came in, and we talked about what the finance committee means. He talked about his background. We talked about what the focus of the finance committee is. He talked about what he would like to do as part of the finance committee. I came away from that saying, absolutely, this guy needs to be on the finance committee. And I called the moderator and said he'd be a great member of the committee. Unfortunately, he agreed and he appointed Andy rather. So I think it's a case-by-case basis as you go about doing it. I saw Gopal's hand up and then Sue's hand.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing Barry say is that from a transparency perspective, there was so much circus going on related to my appointment and somebody else's appointment. Somebody was appointed, taken back, and so on and so forth. I think what I'm hearing Barry say is, for transparency reasons, let us say that this is the criteria that we would be using, just like how you said, Mark. Put it on a piece of paper and make it available for everyone to see.
Well, these meetings, and Barry, to Gopal's point, I mean, when it comes time to appoint or reappoint, it's going to be a public meeting. It's going to be a posted meeting. Public can attend. If it's on Zoom, it'll be broadcast live or whatever. It'll be broadcast on cable or however they do it. It'll be recorded. So the process to which somebody gets appointed is going to be a public process, and that's the main reason we wanted to do this. So I guess I think it's a case-by-case basis. You interview, you ask questions, and then you make a determination.
It seems to me that, Barry, are you more concerned about the reappointment of members?
I'm concerned about what criteria are going to be used for new appointments or reappointments. That's all.
Okay.
And again, I'll say, I think it's a case-by-case basis based on interviews and questions and needs on the FinCom. So
Yeah.
I agree with Mark. It is a case-by-case basis. And in your case, Gopal, what the misunderstanding was in the mix-up, and it seemed like it was a little chaotic, is because our new town moderator didn't understand that he had to fill all those positions by precinct, that all the precincts had to be filled first. And then when you've got all those 5 precincts filled, then when there's extra people, then you can put them into those precincts. So that was the confusion there. And that was just because of inexperience and then not following the charter. But I think it's on a base by, you have to do it on case by case, because there's just going to be, we have 5 precincts and we want representation from them all. And if the criteria is so strict, you're not going to get volunteers, you're not going to get people who want to be on finance committee. And there is a lot to learn. And there is not, people have a misunderstanding that they think municipal government should be run like a corporation. And corporations, municipal government is totally different than from a corporation and how to run that. And so municipalities, I know there's always finance committee members that come on who say, you know, we should be doing this and this and this, and free cash, where are we getting all this free cash? We should be, you know, spending it all. They don't understand municipal government. And so I think it's a case by case basis. And if someone is interested in finance committee, I would assume, I would hope that they would be watching some of our finance committee meetings and learning.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Barry.
traditionally, that is, you watch the meeting a couple of times and you get a sense, yeah, I can contribute to that. Sounds good. I like that. It's, but I believe, if I've got it right, when this was originally presented, there was concern. The reason it was presented was there was concern that the sole appointing authority would just appoint his buds because his buds were going to vote for all sorts of cool things, like a landing strip where the town common is, because they want to bring in their airplane. I mean, it's, you know, why?
That's not, no, when I proposed this, because I'm the one that proposed it, I proposed it because I wanted a public process for the appointment.
Right.
Not that somebody's buddy was gonna get appointed. Hey, listen, I got appointed by the moderator. Very happy that he did. All of us, as a matter of fact, everybody in this room got appointed by the moderator. And it worked out great. This is a great committee. But I think moving forward, it just should be a public process.
Yeah.
It should be posted and people should know why they got appointed. I have no idea how I got appointed. And I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering why I got appointed. But that's another debate for another day. Dan.
Yeah, I just think the bottom line is the criteria that are going to be used will be determined by the 3 people on that committee.
Correct.
And they will decide how they make that decision, the same as how the town moderator would decide previously how to make that decision. The difference will be that we'll all get to see the decision being made, and we'll get to hear how each person is sorting those criteria and priorities. And when we choose our person to appoint to that committee, we will have the chance to ask whoever wants to be appointed what their priorities would be, what criteria they would be looking for. And, you know, if multiple people from the finance committee want to be on that committee, you know, then we can have a discussion about it. But I think it ultimately is not really up to us to decide what those criteria are, at least beyond our appointed person.
Representative. Yep. I think, Dan, that's a great summary. I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it.
No, I definitely agree, because obviously that's why there is a member of the finance committee on this board or on this committee, because that's their job. That's why we want them there. We're not the ones, our whole group aren't the ones who are appointing now. It's the person it's that 3-person committee. So I completely agree with what Dan said.
Yeah, I think Dan did that's a great explanation. Any further discussion on this topic? All right, moving on to the next. Sue, dying to hear how CIPC and the DPW is doing.
CIPC is, right now we're working on all of the projects, and we're prioritizing, and we're meeting tomorrow night to discuss what we're going to be sending forward to Carter. There was a DPW meeting tonight, and so I don't have anything new to bring up. So I wasn't able to attend that meeting because I'm here tonight. So, but I'll have something for the next one. But CIPC is busy working on all the capital projects, and hopefully our deadline is to Carter by December 1st.
Okay,
Oh.
and then you guys you want to continue on with the school committee?
School committee, it was interesting. They're starting to write their budget. They could write a COVID budget, or they could write a general budget the way they usually do. And Jay has decided that he's going to write a budget that is like it's done every year. He just doesn't know where anything is going to be with all these COVID issues. So they've just started the process. I haven't seen anything yet, because they're kind of behind with all of the remote learning and training and everything. So, but they're working on their budget, and we'll see. They do have, the teachers were only 1 year for contracts, so teachers will be up for negotiations as well as some other unions. So I don't know what their budget's gonna look like. At the moment, he wasn't quite sure, but I know they're busy working on it right now.
Okay. Sustainability committee, we have, oh, go ahead, Barry.
Sue, do we know if the school is losing population?
You mean because of COVID?
Yes.
I don't know if they are. I know some districts are losing population because the parents have decided they're going to homeschool.
Yeah.
Or they've sent their children to private schools. I don't know what's happening in Grafton.
I can answer that because I asked somebody that question. And I'm trying to remember, I think I asked Jay, and I think it was at our tri-meeting. Because that is, Sue, I've been hearing that as well, a lot of chatter. On the what they call the listserv for the school business administrators. And he had indicated that we had very little. If I recall correctly, he was like, 10 students, something like that. So no, we are not seeing in Grafton so far a lot of what you could call melt, or, people just disappearing.
And I know
that was the answer he gave me when I asked him last time.
And school districts that are seeing a decline because they're doing homeschooling or sent them to private schools. My understanding for the last workshop that I attended, that last webinar, the superintendent said that they cannot dismiss, they just cannot forget about those students, because they're more than likely going to come back. The students that are in private schools will probably come back. So he said, don't reduce your budgets because you think the population has declined. So they have to be very cognizant of that fact. So.
Barry?
Their state funding is based on a per pupil cost, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else on that? No update from the sustainability committee. I need to reach out to Ed and find out what's going on and when we're going to meet again. Library and economic development. Oh, go ahead, Barry. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barry.
On sustainability, I happened to be watching the select board meeting yesterday, and Ed indicated that he wanted to have two of the sustainability committee members join him in a presentation to the select board.
Okay.
And
I didn't see that.
one of the committee members was curious as to why we were going to do that, but anyway, we have the benchmark report. It's sitting there. It's old. The first of 4 reports. It's done.
Okay. Sue?
There were 4 parts to this sustainability committee.
There were supposed to be 4 reports. The first one was benchmarking, comparing us to sister communities and a few
Right.
others. I'm not 100% certain what the other 3 are because I've been so involved in the first one.
But are the other 3 being worked on?
Not right now.
Okay.
So let me reach out to Ed and find out, and I'll have an update for the committee.
Okay. Yep.
Irene, did I see your hand up?
No, I was just letting you know that Barry had a question before you moved on to me.
Okay. So now I'm going to move on to you. Economic development and library.
Okay, economic development is, pretty much cruising along. Very deep into trying to be as supportive as we can of our town businesses, into the holiday seasons, anticipating that foot traffic will be down. And of course, the last 2 years, we had the very successful Shop Grafton campaign. And so we wanted to be able to do that again this year, but recognizing that, again, foot traffic could be down. So how can people get their little stamps and show that they're shopping local and thus be eligible to enter the drawing? The other thing that was kind of cool was the last couple of years, we kind of felt like, oh, we need, sexy gifts that people are going to really care about. And therefore, they'll go shop local. We give it away like an iPod and some other stuff. And this year we said, you know what? Let's keep the money local. So this year, the gifts are going to be, the lottery prizes, so to speak, or raffle prizes, are gift certificates to our local businesses. So it will be, if I remember correctly, your choice. So, okay, you're a winner, you get a $100 gift certificate, and it will either be generic, you can go spend it anywhere in Grafton you want, and then the business owner, submits for reimbursement, or I believe it can be specific to a business. I don't remember which one we chose.
That's a great
But again,
idea.
all the money is now going back to a Grafton business, but at the discretion of a consumer. In other words, we're not making that decision. It is the consumer's choice. But we loved that. We were like, yeah, why didn't we think of this 2 years ago? But that's what
That's a
we're
great
doing.
idea.
Yeah. So that's good. So again, helping to make us look business friendly. We are supportive. And that's one of the reasons our meals tax is still up, is because one thing I see in this town, despite all the other things that have gone on and all the other craziness, is, boy, do we want to support our local restaurants,
No question
and other
about that.
businesses, the antique store, general store, and, fetching and everybody else. It's incredible.
Oh, Paul, you had a question, and then Sue Robbins?
I just wanted to know, what has been the impact of COVID on businesses in Grafton? Have a number of businesses shut down or anything like that? Is there any stat on that?
I have not heard anything. So at my last EDC meeting so far, we have not heard that. So if that kind of thing is happening, that's a good question, though. I'm going to make a point of asking at our next meeting if we know of anyone that has, because of COVID, had to completely shut down. But I think most businesses, retail especially, have done a good job of working around. And even some of your in-person businesses, the yoga instructors, the dance schools, Apple Tree Arts, have managed to work around. Apple Tree Arts is doing a real cool thing for Christmas where they're making it like a radio broadcast almost. So you're going to pay to tune in, or maybe it's just a donation. I don't remember how it's working. But again, they've been creative. And in fact, one of the other things the EDC did was run a marketing seminar like they did last year to help businesses, learn how to do more things, again, to drive business, and specifically with COVID-friendly tactics.
Nice. Sue, you had a question?
Yes, I just wanted to find out if the Economic Development Committee has set any goals about how and when they're going to attract businesses into the town, some new businesses.
I don't know
I know
about
because of COVID, it's going to be difficult, but I would think you would be starting to set some goals.
Yeah, the big thing right now is working on deciding, how they did that presentation last year. What do they want the old DPW site to look like? And they came up with a couple of ideas. There was mixed use, there was a park, there were a couple of, different ones. And I'm trying to recall if the decision has been made or not. Not that we wouldn't take anything that comes in, I don't think, but I think they have decided which one they feel is the best use. And so when they go out with RFPs, they will be saying, this is what we would like to see.
Don't know if RFP went out for that place.
I don't think it's gone out yet. You'll have, one of these days, I'll remember to have my notes in front of me, because remembering I'm supposed to be reporting to you guys on this stuff. That hasn't gone out yet. I don't think it's going out until, because we talked about the deadlines as well. We were very concerned with, the holidays and would people have enough time, and I'll have to check. I'll get back to everybody during next meeting. Okay.
What's going on with the library?
Library's cruising along, still on budget.
Looks good. Building
The
looks
big
beautiful.
thing that they wanted is, it is going to be sewn up and tight before the winter, though we did, of course, get that freak snowstorm in October. But that's what they want. The big thing is, will the envelope be sealed so that they can do all interior work through the winter? And barring something highly unusual, that is happening and will happen, and we're in very good shape.
Nice.
One of the interesting things, I think I mentioned this last time, is because of the delays in COVID, we are in the unusual position of, we have most of our materials. Okay, the material, we had ordered stuff, it came in, it's sitting there ready to go. So a lot of times on construction, okay, we're ready for phase 3. Where's the wood? And the wood's still on order, hasn't come in yet. But we're the other way around. Here's the wood. Okay, guys, when can you start putting it up? So that's good. And the other thing that's cruising along is, one of the things that was kind of sold as part of the project is there would be a big push for a quote capital campaign, individual donors. That is up and running. People are actually making appointments, walking through the building, because we're looking at, potential naming rights on buildings and perhaps furniture and some other things. So that is moving along nicely. Interest there.
That's
People
excellent.
are excited about it. So yeah, library's looking great.
Awesome. Hey, we need to go back. I in my my haste. Did you have a question about this, Barry? Because I wanted to go back to a previous agenda item.
What will it cost for me to put up a memorial plaque for my cat?
You could. I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to put you in touch with the person who's running the campaign.
It was a good cat.
You're so funny, Barry.
I'm just-
So I skipped over the draft of the Finance Committee report for the 2020 report. I know Sue sent that out. I think I sent back one comment. We missed a subcommittee in the list of things that we were doing, so we need to add that. But other than that, I think it's a good report. Go ahead,
Okay.
Sue.
It's going to need a lot of tweaking.
I really don't think it needs that much tweaking. Go ahead, Sue.
Good. Yes.
The subcommittees, it was a question. So what I had done is I probably confused you all by including a part 2 and a part 2 of the town report on your attachment. One of them has subcommittees. We had a couple last year and we've never added a subcommittee in the past. And I was wondering if you wanted to add that.
I
And
think
one of them really didn't happen, didn't really jump too far, which was the capital planning bylaw committee, but we had an official committee.
Yep.
And the other one was the override.
override really wasn't official.
It
No.
really wasn't.
No.
No, that really wasn't official. So I think the capital planning committee makes sense. Go, Paul. Did I see your hand up?
Can I request that my name has a
Yes.
Yes, I apologize.
No problem.
I actually, as soon as you signed on tonight, I'm like, oh no, I spelled his name wrong. So yes, it will be corrected.
So I agree that it requires some corrections.
Barry?
I have to get the right numbers for this year, in terms
Well, no,
of,
that I understand, but I think the format and the way you laid it out, I think is excellent. So I don't think we need too many tweaks to it. Barry, did you have something? Oh, I
Well,
thought I saw your hand up.
myth is kind of easy to spell. Let me ask you a technical question, Irene.
yep,
My understanding with concrete, when you pour it, you
Yep.
throw down the rebar, you put up the frames and you pour it, and it's all solid concrete. However, in my opportunity to watch these things on television, I saw this technique where they actually put a balloon structure inside the frame for the concrete, and they pour around the balloon. And you'd say, well, it's not going to be as strong, will it? Apparently, it is equally strong and a lot lighter and a lot less expensive. So I'm curious as to whether they're doing that in the library or did that.
I doubt it, because I'm sure I would have heard about it. because-
Everything I saw was rebar, Barry.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think this is a very traditional, New England building. But that's something to think about for future projects. But no, I am 99.9% certain that it is traditional standard construction.
Okay.
So Sue, what do you want us to do with the with the town report. I think the format is good. I think we add the subcommittees. Is there anything else we need to do with it before we get the final draft from Irene?
No, as long as you're happy with, there was an override committee, correct? Not a subcommittee.
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't?
No, not officially from the town.
Yeah.
Was there's a financial policy review committee, correct? Are you seeing that? Liz?
Matt and Mark. That was Matt and Mark who looked over the financial policies, but I don't think it was a committee.
Nope, it wasn't.
Okay. So, and shared services is out.
Yes. David is shared services. He is. He's doing all that work.
Really?
Yeah.
Does anybody know that besides you?
Yes, he's met with the select board.
Okay,
I saw him at the meeting.
Yep.
okay. So everybody's happy with that calendar year 2020
Yep.
with the list other than shared services, the override in the financial policy?
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Good. All right, so then the final committee report that I have, the Town Administrative Screening Committee continues to work towards its goal of narrowing down candidates to present to the Select Board. And we will be starting interviews the week of the 11th of December. So that's the report. Anything you want to add to that, Heather?
No, I think it was a good meeting. I think of the candidates, we all pretty much had similar ones that we want to move forward. So I think it was good.
I agree. Sue?
I just wanted to backtrack to the CIPC, the capital planning.
Yes.
We do have to get 2020 fiscal 22 to Mr. Terenzini by December 1st. However, the 5-year plan will be coming to him later because we're in such a rush right now to get things done and we only have so much time. And the list was just given to us. So the 5-year plan will come after December 1st, but we will be working on it.
Excellent.
A lot of
Go ahead, go, Paul.
How many
Thank you, Sue.
how many candidates do we have for TA?
Can't talk about that. That's all executive session
Okay.
information. After the finalists are released, you'll be able to understand how many candidates there were, but right now we can't talk about that.
Okay, thanks.
Next on the agenda, a minute from November 5th and November 7th. I take one motion to approve both as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor by roll call, Irene,
Irene, I.
Barry,
aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
go, Paul,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Mark, aye, unanimous. Being no other business.
I just have a question, Mark.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The financial policies that we have, I know we submitted the OPEB policy to did the selectmen ever sign that, review it and sign
You
it?
know, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm gonna have to find out. I don't know the status of them. I know we had that meeting with them. I know we presented it to them. They took it under advisement. I don't know if it's been put back on the agenda or not.
I know that Doreen said she wanted to meet with the finance committee to discuss and ask questions about the policies, but that never occurred either. So
No, it hasn't.
I don't know what the status is.
Well, let me find out and I'll report to the next
All right.
meeting. Good
Do we
question. I'm
have
glad you
anything
asked.
on BVT, Mark?
Nope.
Okay,
Okay, being no other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Good meeting, everybody. I want to say one more time that I really appreciate the time that Carter's taking with us and working with us.
Yes.
I mean, Sue, you and Heather have been on the committee for the longest. Have you ever had the town administrator come in and ask for your opinion on revenues?
No.
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 Nope.
I think that's
They never
awesome.
even wanted to-
I've been doing that for 35 years, so it's nice to see it make Grafton. So that's
A lot
awesome.
of them never even entertain wanting to have recommendations or questions on the budget. So
That's true. That's true.
so
Um,
much less-
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call, Irene,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
go Paul,
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Mark, aye. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting. We'll, when we get the firm date from Carter on the budget, we will schedule our future meetings. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody and Merry Christmas.